Dear friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor Balramlu, retired from the Kakatiya University, Warangal, Telangana. Currently, I am working as professor at Center for Economic and Social Studies, Hyderabad. I am also a recipient of awards, particularly from ICSR National Fellowship and then UGC Emeritus Fellowship. And I also worked about 35 years both in teaching and research experience. Then my area of research is policy analysis and decentralization and poverty alleviation programs. Now today we will discuss about poverty alleviation programs. We will be able to discuss about the various public policies that are being launched by our own government of India, and we will be able to discuss about the causes for poverty, indicators of poverty. Then we will also discuss about the evaluation or assessment of public policies, particularly poverty alleviation programs during 1947 to even today's. Then, and as a student of public policy, we need to understand every public policy should have two concerns. One is long-term concern and second one is short-term concern. In the case of long-term concern, the long-term concern should be able to alter the existing unequal social economic system. And the short-term concern is that it should increase the production and thereby reduce the poverty or any other problem that are there in the society. So therefore, given this framework or given this brief introduction, we will discuss about the framework of our own public policies and several other things. Now, normally, as a student of public policy, we need to keep in mind that in every society, there will be certain constitutional framework or constitutional goals or government goals, society goals will be there. So therefore, every public policy, broadly, it should be in consonance or in accordance with the constitutional goals. But if you look at our own Indian public policies, nature public policies, though the Constitution provide the basic premise for undertaking the public policies, but in practice, there are several other factors which are really influencing the public policies. For instance, most of the public policies are undertaken at the time of elections. Now you will be seeing either on media and other places where our own public policy, our own political parties, they announce number of policies and programs that they would like to undertake. Then the other one is most of the public policies are undertaken at the instance of or with the assistance of the international organization like World Bank or IMF or any other organizations. Then the other one that we need to keep in mind is that whenever there is a threat to the ruling class power structure, in the sense, now when the public policy is not reaching to the people, then people definitely they think that the government is not really doing anything for us. And so therefore sometimes they also give a signal that if you don't do something for the welfare of the poor people, there is every possibility that we will also oppose the government. So therefore in our country, some of the public policies are undertaken whenever there is a threat or whenever there is a demand from the public. So therefore, we need to keep in mind that there are several factors which influence the public policy. That is constitutional goals or international assistance from the international organizations or at the time of elections or whenever there is a threat to the ruling class power. Now, given this background, we will also discuss what are the basic problems in the poverty alleviation programs. Now, before we discuss about the various poverty eradication programs, we need to keep in mind what is poverty. Now, we need to question the basic premise of this particular topic, because in the poverty alleviation programs, poverty is the central question. For instance, people are illiterate because of poverty. People are ill health because of poverty. People are, say, backward because of poverty. So therefore, in the poverty alleviation programs, poverty is the central question. So keeping that in mind, we need to understand what is poverty. Now, there are different methods to estimate the poverty. Now, one is based on the per capita income and expenditure. Normally, Government of India and the different state governments, they estimate the number of people who are living under below poverty or the extent of poverty that is there in our country based on the per capita income and expenditure. That is one.
As I said, there are different indicators about the poverty. One is per capita income and expenditure. The second one is consumption of calories and nutrition food. This is also one of the criteria for understanding the poverty or estimating the poverty. Then World Bank, normally they also give us some inputs for estimating the poverty. They say that food, clothes, shelter, health, and education. These are the important factors while understanding the poverty. That is, when a policy is formulated, you need to keep in mind that particular policy is really addressing this issue or not, that we need to keep in mind. Then Bharat Dogra, who wrote a book on poverty, development and poverty, he says that apart from the roti, kapda, makan, health and education, the other important factors are security, dignity and protected drinking water. This is nothing to do with your own economic aspect. It is also something to do with the other aspects of the life. That is, security is important, dignity is important. Then protected drinking water also is important. Then the international standard for estimating the poverty is any household or any person who is not earning about $2 per day, that is considered as below poverty line. Now, if you look at our own Indian condition, the average earning is, it appears as per the government statistics, it is only $1.25. So therefore, there are many people who are really under below poverty line. Then recently, the UNO government, UNO says that happiness is also part of your poverty or development. Now, Bhutan government is in the constitution, they said happiness is the most important for understanding the development or for moving forward to the society should move forward that. Then they say that the factors really that influence the happiness, it includes GDP, not only per capita income, years of life expectancy, social support, trust on government, freedom to take decisions. These are some of the important factors that need to be taken into account while estimating the poverty. At the end, what we have to understand is there are different indicators about the poverty, but normally as a student of public policy, we are under the impression that poverty means only economic aspect of the individual, but poverty is beyond the economic aspect. That is, it is ensuring socio-economic security to the poor, adequate employment, income, freedom in selection of employment, opportunities to upscale the skills, education, health, security, dignity, and several other things. So, having discussed about the indicators of poverty, let us discuss about the causes for poverty. Because as a student, we need to, the difference between the layman and the student is that we need to understand the causes. Everybody knows that there is a poverty, but one should understand what exactly is the causes for poverty. Now, there could be several causes. There cannot be one cause for existence of poverty. And if you look at the debates on the causes of poverty, indicate that one indicator is that traditional and religious explanation for the poverty has been karma or fatal theory. This approach finds the causes for poverty outside the socio-economic structure of the society. There are people, suppose if you go to the rural areas, people think that why somebody is rich, why somebody is poor. They say that it is because of the karma theory. And this particular explanation, this particular viewpoint is there even in today in the rural India. So this is one viewpoint about existence of poverty. The second explanation that we need to keep in mind is they blame the factors such as low level of productivity of labor, relatively poor natural resources, underutilization of resources, application of traditional technology for increasing the productivity, market imperfection, lack of education, and low level of savings. No, these are the factors that are proposed by the liberals, the second explanation. Liberals are those who wanted to bring change in the society by introducing certain reforms in the domain of health and education, but without disturbing the existing unequal social system, unequal economic system. Then the third explanation, they say that they attribute to the factors such as adoption of Western model of strategies for development and opening Indian market to a globalized market and exploitation of resources by multinational corporations. Then fourth school radically differs from the above and maintains that poverty is an outcome of socio-economic inequalities in the society, and it is the exploitation of the man that largely accounts for the staggering dimension of poverty. And Marx identifies the roots of poverty in the sphere of economic structure. He considers poverty as an outcome of defective pattern of distribution of means of consumption, that is income and poverty, and therefore lays the primary emphasis on restructuring the pattern of income and poverty distribution. Therefore, in any sincere effort to eliminate the rural poverty, elimination of concentration of wealth and poverty, property would be indispensable according to Marx's theory. Now, what we have discussed is that there are different indicators of poverty. There are also different causes for poverty. Now, given this framework, we'll also understand what are the models of development that we have adopted for elimination of poverty. Now, if you look at the development experience during the past 7 decades, reveals that central and state governments have evolved and experimented different strategies, starting from growth with trickle down, that is 1950s, Green Revolution 1960s, growth with social justice 1969, minimum needs program 1975, new economic reforms 1991, reforms with human face 2004, inclusive growth 2007, to new public management, public-private partnership, and minimum government and maximum governments, that is 2014 model now for the welfare of the people. Now, these are the model that we have launched. There is shift from 1950s to 2014. That is, in the beginning, we have gone for growth with trickle down, then later on Green Revolution, then later on the growth with social justice, and several other things, new economic reforms and inclusive growth. And today we are in the era of minimum government and a maximum government. That is, in the context of globalization, we are undertaking the public policies. One thing we need to keep in mind while understanding the model of development, that there are certain policies like land reforms, if enforced effectively, can touch the ownership of means of production and can lead to certain structural changes. That is, there are certain policies which can bring structural changes. First, the best example is land reforms or abolition of Jamindar system. Or recent example, if you wanted to take, that is demonetization or goods and service taxes. Now, these are the policies which can really bring some changes in the existing unequal economic system, unequal social, if they are really implemented properly. But there are other policies which are, that is, policies, incremental policies. They are known as, that is, the public policies like subsidy-based poverty elevation programs. They include social security, that is pension and old age, food security, public distribution system, lead to incrementalism and provide some relief to the deprived sections without affecting the basic socio-economic structure of the society. Now, again, I'm repeating. That is, now, if you wanted to understand, if you wanted to categorize our public policies, now we'll come to classification of poverty alleviation programs in India. though the poverty alleviation programs are interconnected to each other, for the purpose of better understanding on the phenomena, they can be categorized into following. One is self-employment or asset-oriented policies. Second one is wage-oriented. Third one is food security-oriented. Fourth one is social security. Now let us discuss an overview of these programs in the following manner. One is self-employment or asset-oriented programs. Now, if you look at the history of the self-employment or asset-oriented programs, they start from 1960s onwards only. Prior to 1960s, there were no specific asset-oriented programs catering the needs of the rural poor. That we have to keep in mind. Only from 1960s onwards, we have that one. That is special programs to cater the needs of the marginal farmer, small farmer, and other poorer section or weaker section of society. For the first time, the government of India gave a different approach to the development strategy in 1960s. That is growth with social justice in 1969. And as a part of that, government of India established a separate agency that was called as Small Farmers Development Agency, and other one is Marginal Farmers and Agriculture Labor Development Agency. Marginal Farmers and Agriculture Labor Development Agency in the year 1969. Then these two programs were merged in the 1975. Later on, IRDP, Integrated Rural Development Program, was established, launched in the year 1978, and then from 1980 onwards, it was extended to the entire country. Then later on, the IRDP again is merged with the Swarna Jayanti Grama Swarojgar Yojana in 1999. This Swarna Jayanti Grama Swarojgar Yojana is a self-employment program that focuses on poverty alleviation. It also promotes self-help groups, development of micro-enterprises by providing bank credit and government subsidy. It also provides 50% of benefit to SC, ST, and 40% for women and 3% for disabled persons. Then this particular program again renamed as National Rural Livelihood Mission. Now the basic goal of this particular mission is poverty elimination through social mobilization, institution building, financial inclusion, and a portfolio of sustainable livelihoods. The vision of this particular mission is each poor family should have an equal income of at least rupees 50,000 per annum. Main objectives of this particular mission is, it is a staturation approach, cover all families. One member from each household, preferably women, would be organized into self-help groups. Covering all villages in a phased manner, special focus on states with large tribal population. It should also cover about 7 crore rural poor households. And it is also, the other important objective is promotion of skilled wage employment opportunities and elimination of rural poverty. Now these are the main objectives of National Rural Livelihood Mission. And the latest program launched by our own NDA government, that is Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Antyodaya Yojana. It is called in short form DAY. It is a new scheme of the NDA government to replace the National Rural Livelihood Mission and National Urban Livelihood Mission implemented by Ministry of Rural Development and Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation respectively. The aim is to promote formation of self-help groups in the villages and make them capable of self-employment by providing entrepreneurial capacities. Coming to the wage-oriented programs, prior to 1960s, there were no specific wage employment policies. Again, like your self-employment, here also in the case of wage employment, there were no specific programs only providing wages to the rural poor. Only from 1960s onwards, we have formulated these wage-oriented policies. The first of this kind is Rural Manpower Program in 1960s and Maharashtra Employment Guarantee Scheme. Then that was launched in the year 1971. Then Food for Work Program 1977. Then later on, this Food for Work Program was renamed or extended to the entire country and renamed it as National Rural Employment Program in the year 1980. Then there is also another program called Rural Landless Employment Guarantee Program in the year 1983. Then Jawahar Rozgar Yojana in 1989, Employment Assurance Scheme 1993, Swarna Jayanti Gramina Sampurna Yojana in the year 1999, Food for Work Program, that is 2004, and the latest program that we have is National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, that is 2005, and it came into operation in the year 2006 in 200 districts initially. Then later on, this program is renamed as Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. From 2009, it is in operation even today. So as a student of public policy, we need to keep in mind that in the case of the wage-oriented policies, earlier there were it was not guaranteed. But under the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, every individual, whoever is willing to work as a worker, now it's a guarantee. And it's an obligation on the part of the field level authorities to provide employment within 15 days. Now, there are several rules and regulations for implementation of this program. Now, coming to the third kind of poverty alleviation program, that is food and nutrition based interventions. Now, there are several interventions that were undertaken by both central and the state governments. And the most important of them are Integrated Child Development Services, that is ICDS in 1975. Then the second important is Midday Meals Program in 1995. Then third one is Village Grain Bank Scheme for chronically food scarce areas, that is in 1996. Targeted Public Distribution System in 1997. Antyodaya Anna Yojana in 2000, Annapurna in 2000, Kishore Shakti Yojana, a nutrition program for adolescent girls, that is 2000 to 2001. Then Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme 2005, National Rural Health Mission. As I said, it's not a food, but water is also important component of the food. So therefore, we also consider it a nutrition program. Then National Food Security Mission in 2009, which is aimed at increasing production and procurement and storage. Then the other one is National Food Security Act 2013. From 2013 onwards, we have National Food Security Act, and it is in operation in almost all the states from 2016 onwards. Coming to the fourth one is social security policies. They are National Old Age Pension Scheme, Indira Gandhi National Widow Pension Scheme, Indira Gandhi National Disability Pension Schemes. Now, apart from the national schemes, even the state governments also, they have number of old age social security policies, which include widows and old age people and any other poor people also. So these are some of the policies. Now, if you look at the latest program of NDA government, that is Mission Antyodaya. This is the latest program that is launched by our own present government for poverty alleviation program. Poverty alleviation. It aims is to reaching out to the last person in India. It also aims to converge social welfare plans and schemes across the ministers, especially health, education, employment, and social security and insurance schemes under financial services, and target these to reach individual households under one umbrella. The convergence of multiple schemes under a single scheme could enable the government to mitigate all these to the digital Aadhaar enabled platform, thereby contributing further to the Digital India mission aims. Now, this scheme is aimed at to enable greater simplification, higher converge, and the target delivery of benefits. Then, so far we discussed about what is the purpose of public policy, then what exactly we assessment of the poverty alleviation programs. There are different viewpoints about the impact of poverty eradication programs. Considerable percentage of the total beneficiaries have utilized the schemes for the intended purpose and improved their employment opportunities and income levels. However, these beneficiaries are relatively better off among the communities and represent the better endowed areas and semi-urban areas or districts. Considerable percentage of beneficiaries have diverted the loan or schemes and utilized the amount in the sectors or ventures which are suitable to their skills and interest and derived benefits. Many beneficiaries have misutilized the schemes due to poor socio-economic conditions, unscientific cultural practices, and political intervention. Further, the causes for the failure of non-utilization of the schemes or loans are found to be inadequacy of land, lack of irrigation facilities, unfertile land, narrow choice in the schemes, defective administrative procedures, and negative attitude of financing agencies, vested interest and corrupt nature of middlemen, absence of coordination among the developmental agencies, hostile bureaucratic culture, cumbersome administrative procedures, and poor health conditions, spending the amount for cultural functions, cornering of the schemes by the relatively rich among the communities, which hamper the progress of the schemes collectively. Now, there are others who also say the beneficiaries who could not avail the schemes or loans from the government agencies claim that the society or agencies fail to reach the poorest of the poor among the rural communities and remote areas of the country. They are of the opinion that piece of land is the precondition for proper utilization of the scheme, especially in the rural areas. The government should give them a piece of land without which no development programs can be fruitful. Now, what we have to understand is,
Friends, let us sum up. Now, so far we discussed about the poverty alleviation programs in the rural areas. Now, we also discussed that Government of India during the past 7 decades has been undertaking several poverty alleviation programs. And if you can really analyze the poverty alleviation programs, they can be categorized into two. That is structural change oriented policies and incremental oriented policies. Structural oriented policies are those which can bring some changes in the existing unequal economic system, unequal social system. While incremental policies, they only give us temporary benefit to the poor people. The instance that we have already narrated is that giving food at the subsidy rates, it will only address the problem temporarily but not a permanent one. We also discussed about the various poverty alleviation programs starting from self-employment, wage-oriented, food security and social security and several other public policies. These programs, even if they are implemented sincerely, it can also address the problem of rural poverty. And government, what they should take measure is, though the policies are good, the intentions are good, but implementation not really reaching to the people, or it's not really taking place. If the policies are implemented in letter and spirit, definitely even the incremental policy also can bring some changes, can bring some transformation in the rural areas. Thank you very much.